Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you all very much for coming. My name, just to confirm again, is Kenneth Bannerman. I'm the founder and head of the Airfields of Britain Conservation Trust, which is certainly Britain's, if not also the world's, first national charity of its kind. Well, we're really happy today to be at Brawdy. This is our first memorial unveiling in Wales, and as you will probably already be aware, we have another unveiling tomorrow at Templeton Airfield near Narberth. So that's at the same time tomorrow, 11 o'clock. Brawdy, enough to say, is one of Wales's most famous airfields. Very well known, especially in more recent years, through its, not least its search and rescue work, as was often featured in the mass media. It dates right back to February 1944. The 1st of February, not as many people think, the 2nd. And it had a bit of a strange start to its career, because originally it was meant to be a bomber operational training unit base when the land was first selected in the summer of 1942. There was a further procedural change the following year when officially RAF Fighter Command took over the nominal control of this base. But eventually it was Coastal Command that became active. And as soon as Brawdy opened, its first major unit was number 517 Squadron, a very important unit which flew Handley Page Halifaxes for meteorological reconnaissance duties. Hugely important. Brawdy and also some other airfields involved in this duty, such as Tyree in the Hebrides. Very dangerous work as well, because several Halifaxes were actually completely lost without trace while flying way out into the Atlantic Ocean while carrying out these vital weather forecasts for future military operations. One or two other squadron units were based here as well, but number 517 was by far and away the main unit at that time. And this carried on until the squadron relocated towards the end of 1945 to another famous British airfield closely associated with Brawdy, Chivener in Devon, near Barnstable. The next few years, Brawdy had an on-off career, I think it's best to describe. It then became a satellite to by now Naval Airfield Dale, not far from Milford Haven. And it became what was known at the time as a tender or satellite. So it was by then referred to as HMS Goldcrest II. However, come the 1950s, Brawdy came back into action. Another place, as you may well know this, it was closely associated as well with St David's Airfield, just along the road from here. Now, just going back in time a little bit, from the outset, St David's was actually Brawdy's parent airfield. Now, St David's was a good place in itself, but it had certain limitations, especially when it came to runway orientation. So one or two of the units there actually used to fly their aircraft from St David's to here, and then they would further load up, especially with fuel, before going off in operations. Shortly after World War II ended, the two airfields switched positioning so that Brawdy, meanwhile, became the parent airfield and St David's the satellite. Once Brawdy came back into play, fully into action from the early 1950s, and there was all sorts of reconstruction work as well, St David's supported it again in a satellite capacity. There were jet fighter squadrons based here in the 1950s flying notably Hawker Seahawks. This was when the Fleet Air Arm was back in action. There was further redevelopment work in the early 1960s, during which notably the three hangars that were at St David's were relocated to Brawdy. They've sadly now gone since the base finally closed. But these were the three hangars that straddled the shortest of the three runways at Brawdy. Brawdy's runways incidentally had a very unusual layout, but it actually paid off because they were very long ones for their day and they were better orientated against the wind than at St David's. So in the 1960s there was extremely important advanced jet fighter training here with Hawker Hunters. And this carried on until the Fleet Air Arm left Brawdy in the early 1970s. The RAF then quickly came back, and as is probably best remembered, certainly in the general public's minds, Brawdy became a mixture of specialised training for number 1 Tactical Weapons Unit with British Aerospace Hawks, the aircraft that the Red Arrows now use. And then perhaps even more so in some respects in the general public's minds, it was one of the main search and rescue helicopter bases in Britain. And there were a couple of squadrons based here again for many years. Eventually, sadly, with yet more defence cutbacks, the base in an RAF capacity began significantly running down in the early 1990s. The Tactical Weapons Unit just disappeared, and then the helicopters did so not long afterwards. It had a bit of a protracted closure, Brawdy, and the Army, as you'll obviously be aware, it then began moving in 1995, although official closure of Brawdy wasn't until the early spring of 1996. Since then, there's been Army use. There was this, shall we say, scare more recently that the Army was actually going to move, but this plan has now been at the very least postponed for the time being. However, just looking at the bigger picture, just to mention this very quickly as well, Brawdy and indeed all of Britain's airfields are enormously important places to every single one of us, not just militarily, but also socially. Jobs, facilities, services, you name it. Even today, if we just look at it from the financial side of things, the airfield is still generating many millions of pounds for the local area and economy. So between that and all the other services and advantages that places like Brawdy bring, not to mention, as do all of our other airfields, just please do always remember our airfields, and of course not forgetting all the personnel who have served here and in some cases have died while serving here. Our airfields have been increasingly recognised as Britain's greatest ever physical assets. And but until recently, sadly, they were really best just taken for granted, if even that, which isn't a good state of affairs to have. But thankfully, times and attitudes are now changing, and people are now, albeit a bit belatedly, beginning to realise just how phenomenally important these places are to every single one of us. So I can only just ask you on behalf of the charity and all other airfield supporters across the UK, just within reason, just do all you reasonably can, please, to just try help these places and all they can, because just always remember, they are helping us. But it's about time that now we help them a bit, because it helps everybody. It's that simple, really. So again, thank you all very much for attending. This is now our 57th memorial we're unveiling. We've got hundreds more planned to come over the next number of years. So we're moving as fast as we can with this. And therefore, we're all delighted to say that we can now unveil our latest memorial to yet another of Britain's greatest ever physical assets, in this case, Brawdy Airfield. Thank you all very much. Okay. Just want to help unveil? Yeah. There's a handle there at the top as well. Just okay. Just. Yep. Thanks. Thank you. Thanks. Now, if you want to come forward, just obviously watch the road. You're all welcome to take photographs. What do you think?
Beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
Okay, that's exactly what we do elsewhere. Okay.
You come a bit closer, that's it. Yes. Just think.
I'll show you in a minute. We'll just get through. Yeah. Okay. On that, or what? Work in the business park. Do you have to
No idea.
No.
Last time I came.
Okay. Right. Cheese.